Hello, friends. Welcome back to another installation of my Year of Yin series experience thing that's happening in my life. I have begun studying a yoga teacher training course for Yin Yoga. I wanted to go over some of my notes with you guys, mostly just to kind of help me process. Also, I think that there's a lot to take away from these principles and these concepts. So if you want to think more about Yin, if this is clicking for you, then welcome. This is a place for you. My eyeballs hurt. It's too much. It's too much. I should be sleeping. So I'll go over the foundations of like the practice itself. It all started with Chochat Ling, I guess. Chochat Ling was teaching this American guy, Polly Zink, Kung Fu. Exactly. And Polly began teaching these classes where he would divide up half the class into yin, which would be like floor poses, and then the other half of the class would be yang, and they were like 4-hour classes. And yang would be more kung fu style, like standing, maybe some qigong, I don't know. And then this man named Paul Greeley started attending and was like really interested in just focusing in on the yin, and then he started kind of teaching classes based off that. And then this woman, Sarah Powells, began attending those. And then together they kind of formed Yin Yoga. The course had me think back to my first experience with Yin Yoga, which I kind of mentioned in my last Yin video. And my first experience was in Boca Raton, Florida on my balcony. And it was a hip opening practice. Emotions are stored in the hips in traditional Chinese medicine and in many forms of like holistic medicine. So I was really able to release some things. And I also found myself having like moments of presence that I was not having without the lubrication and foundation of the yin yoga. So yin and yang energies are a foundation of the practice. Yin is soft, feminine, dark, slow, cold, night, winter, inward, and it rules like the front part of your body. And yang, the associations are hard, masculine, right, fast, hot, day, summer, outward, and then the back body. You guys might know this already, but the yin symbol, the yin yang symbol, is called Taijitsu, which I've just called it the yin yang symbol, but it has a name. Yeah, it's essential to reflect on the way that these energies contain a little bit of one another. And if they didn't contain a little bit of one another, then they wouldn't be stable. It would, I feel like in my mind, it would start like spinning really fast or like the lines would blur and they would break each other. But like the fact that they have a little bit of each other's energy within them is essential for the symbol and for the energetic principle to function. And then what the course had me do was write down a list of the things that I do the most often in my life and then classify them as either yin or yang based on the definitions that we just talked about. So for me, I have journaling, tarot, cooking, dancing, working out, going to work, creating, going for a coffee, hosting friends, going to the movies, scrolling my phone, and showering. I labeled all of those things as yin and yang, and it looked pretty yin focused. But that brings me to a point, which is that yin and yang are very relative. Let's say I think showering is yin because it's a time where I'm reflective and caring for myself and I'm slowing down. Okay, well, when compared with sleeping, it's a lot more yang. Yin and yang are always kind of fluid principles and they're very relative to one another. You have to stay flexible in your definitions. And that's important because we're using these elements to treat like disease in the body. So it's important to keep a flexible mind and to have an actual relationship with the fluidity of yin and yang and not get too rigid about it. I'm going to go check on my pasta. Pasta has been devoured. I wanted to show you this picture of Polly Zink and Chochat Ling as well because dripped out. Where were we? Speaking of the relativity of yin versus yang and how those things are fluid based on the context. That makes defining yin poses interesting because say if you were in a standing pose that's quite static, to a lot of people that might seem very yin, but if you then compare it to a child's pose, which is resting and most of your body is on the ground, that would be more yin, and then that could seem more yang. So to kind of define what would constitute a yin pose, the founders of the practice focused more on what it was targeting. Yin specifically targets fascia. It's never targeting muscles, it's always targeting fascia. And fascia is running through our entire body. It's what holds everything together. It's the connective tissue. Yin targets fascia, which is why the poses last for like 3 to 7 minutes. I'll correct myself here if I'm wrong, because that's how long it takes for the connective tissue or fascia to release tension, which is pretty cool. I did make a note. No, it's a note from a version of me a year ago that was studying Hatha yoga, so focused on enlightenment and like opening up energy channels. It's very in the body. You're in these poses and you're doing these practices because you want to open up energy channels that are going to completely alter your consciousness and allow you to really reach enlightenment, not by just willing yourself to via constantly emptying the mind, but by embodying these poses, which kind of automatically, like biohacking almost. At least that's my understanding of it. So I did make a note. I wonder what the Upanishads who developed the system of yoga would think about the whole targeting fascia thing, when in reality, the true definition of yoga is, I believe, to reach spiritual enlightenment. But it's all part of the journey, I think, of taking in all of this information. And I'm very interested in the healing properties of yin yoga. And I think it has so much value, even though it was something that was brought to fruition by like Westerners in the 90s. I think it still has a lot of value, and it does prioritize traditional Chinese medicine. That's the structure for the practice, which I think is incredibly valuable. And it uses a similar, life force energy or qi and energy channels or meridians. So it's very similar to traditional yoga in that sense. It just has a different purpose that I'm learning more and more about every time I look into it. In yin yoga, disease is defined as the obstruction of qi, and healing requires bringing fluid movement back to the body by removing blockages. And these blockages, think about it. Do you feel like you have any blockages in your body right now? I know I have some blockages. I've been having hip pain lately. I have a lot of tightness in my neck and in my traps. And these blockages can be emotional or physical. I just find it very empowering to think about it as elemental level of there's a blockage and I need life force energy to be able to move freely in this part of my body. I think that in and of itself is empowering and very accessible and holds a lot of weight, actually, because our minds, the body keeps the score type shit, our minds get used to holding our body, holding tensions in our body in certain ways. And when you access your body from a point beyond the mind and allow the energy to move more freely, your body can shift and change, and the mind can conceptualize these changes. Healing takes time sometimes just because our minds need to allow us to heal. I don't know. These blockages can be emotional or physical. And I noted that I think the two are very intertwined. If there's an emotional blockage, it will become physical if not treated. And if it's a physical blockage, it certainly has emotional implications and potential origins. Obviously, there are different situations. You could have gotten into a car accident that left you with an injury, and then the emotional blockage kind of attaches itself to that because it represents things to you and it makes you think of your mortality and is a frustrating situation, and emotional blockages glom onto it. Vice versa, you could be in a situation that causes you to hunch your shoulders and not feel empowered, and then the tension begins to form because you're continually carrying these emotions. So I don't know, just something to think about if that has any value for what you might be dealing with in your body. Thinking about it on that level and understanding that they're just blockages, that they need to be released so that this life force energy that's constantly available to you, that's constantly accessible, especially through your breath, can then begin to flow freely. And then we kind of go into the energy channels. In traditional Indian yoga, energy channels are called nadis, and this is where prana or life force flows, and they intersect at the chakras. They're believed to be 72,000 nadis through the body, but there are three main ones. There is Sushumna, Ida, and Pingala. And I was excited to study this because it reminded me of a year ago when I was studying Hatha yoga. And I know Sushumna is like, it's like the bridging of the two, Ida and Pingala, sorry. And Pingala is the masculine. It starts at the base of the spine and ends at the right nostril. And then Ida is the feminine, and so it's like the yang, and then Ida is the yin, the feminine. And it starts at the base of the left side of the spine and then ends at the left nostril. And there's this breathwork practice. Let me Google the name. Yeah, it's Nadi Shoshana, Nadi Shodhana, alternate nostril breathing. So if you want to access these meridians, these nadis, these energy channels right now, you can do this with me really quick. You're going to put your first two fingers together, and then you're going to have these guys ready to go. This goes on your forehead, and then your ring finger goes on the left nostril, or whatever hand you're using, and then the thumb goes on the other nostril. And then you'll like block the right nostril and take a deep breath in through the left. And then you're going to switch the pressure, put the ring finger pressing against the left nostril, and then breathe out through the right nostril. And again, breathe in through the right nostril. And then apply pressure to the right nostril with the thumb, release the ring finger, breathe out through the left nostril. Breathe in through the left nostril. And then cover that left nostril with the ring finger, breathe out through the right nostril. Amazing. So we just worked with those essential three nadis, those energy channels. You just worked with Ida and Pingala, and I think by working with Ida and Pingala, you are getting closer to activating Shushuma. Shushuma, I know, is very significant. Let me stop trying to paraphrase. Shushuma is the bridge to enlightenment, the pathway for Kundalini energy, if you've ever heard of that, and it runs from the root chakra to the crown chakra. It kind of looks like, if you know that medical symbol with the snake wrapping itself around, here it is. That is what Ida, Pingala, and Shushuma look like, where Ida and Pingala interact with Shushuma many times, wrap around. And there are meridians in traditional Chinese medicine, 12 meridians, 6 yin and 6 yang. I'm still kind of getting familiar with these. So the function of yin yoga is to put pressure and tension on the physical locations of these energetic pathways and channels. And this pressure allows blockages to be opened so that those stagnant, stuck energies can begin to run freely and be released. And then we can balance energy, we can balance emotions, and we can free ourselves from disease. So very cool stuff. That's as far as I got this week. I hope that this was somewhat interesting for you guys. If you watched this, I am in love with you. Thank you so much. I'll be back with more yin, certainly. I've been doing a lot of yin in the morning. I'm going to link my favorite yin practice that I found, and I hope that you enjoy it. Go give Kat some love. And I'm sending you lots of love. Bye.